let's go ahead and jump into the first question. Um, let's say someone is looking at an empty folder, they do not have documentation, and they don't know where to start. It can be really hard to like look at that blank screen and know where to go. So, what would you recommend the first steps be for somebody that is um, creating that workflow from scratch?
My suggestion would be start simple. Start with the things that maybe aren't clear to you. If you're starting taking over something, just start simple. You don't have it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be using a variety of tools. It can literally just be you jotting down how to get some simple things done. Because that blank folder, that blank page is probably the most intimidating part of it all of like, well, where do I start? But take one step at a time, take it one document at a time. And over the course of a year or so, you'll look back and you've got a lot of it. The other thing I would just say is be consistent about it. It's very easy, especially when you start off in a new position or a new place or whatever, to be like, oh, I'll create a lot of documentations because you're doing a lot of learning in that early stage. But once you become an expert or intermediate at that particular thing, it's a lot easy to fall off. But actually, that's probably when the document when when you need to be creating the documentation most, because you are bringing your lived experience to the documentation as well. So those would be my two suggestions.
Sure, 100% agree. I think helping yourself at the beginning by giving yourself just the initial stages of some form of formatting, right? Like some structure. Don't go nuts with this, right? There's always ways you're going to improve over time, and you're going to find ways that your documentation is best. I think understanding the difference between user facing and, let's say, tech facing documentation is key here. Because if you're speaking in your user facing voice to text, that ain't gonna hit. If you're, hey, network engineer, let me help you document your stuff. Okay, we go click the start button, right? That's not useful. It's okay to have a bifurcation of your documentation for technical facing and user facing, because you definitely don't want your technical documentation in the hands of users, because they're not going to understand it. That's not their job. So I think having an understanding of audience here is really key as well. And that, to me, has a natural question of what's most useful for those audiences. Ask questions of people. Ask questions of, if you have a tech team, if you're a solo IT person, then ask questions of yourself. Trust me, that's an informative conversation. But if you have a tech team, hey, where are our pain points? What are we seeing is the most critical problem right now? Can it be solved with documentation? And how do we document it in the best way? Is this a training thing? Not even documentation, right? There's other avenues. But then, ask your users as well. Hey, what's one thing you struggle with? We did this. And the big thing was Adobe. How to use Adobe Acrobat, where to get to it, what to do if things go wrong, how to, those initial things that are more than just I know how to use this program, kind of that next level up. And so we really spent the time spending, really understanding the problems that people were experiencing. We went back to the ticket history and looked at what the techs were doing and kind of flowed from there. So our users guided our efforts in documentation by telling us what was most problematic for them. And obviously, we're still having things come up. So understand your audience, understand that there's a bifurcation of that audience, and just simply ask them where to start. And I think you're going to see a lot of immediate payoff there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was actually one of my next questions was how do you decide what should be documented first and what can wait? If it's from a user perspective, that makes sense. Ask them what they need, what they're concerned with. If it's on your team side, is it a matter of just talking to your team and seeing what they need, or how do you identify gaps in how your team is operating without actually talking to them, or if your team doesn't know that that gap exists? how do you kind of evaluate your like team and organization and your workflow for that?
So for us, when it comes to like, I guess when it comes to the end users, kind of going off what Tim was saying of just like if you have a ticketing system, that can be a very good proxy by which you can say like, okay, everyone's asking the same questions, or we keep responding to the same ticket again and again and again. So maybe that's a way to that's kind of an identifier for the end user telling you like basically there's no documentation that exists for this, so I keep having to come back to you. I don't like it depends on how responsive your users are to you, that you can go directly and ask them. But sometimes I feel like there's I don't know, and you're just like, okay, the mystery of the ticket data reveals all type of thing. When it comes to the team itself, I think I usually I've been in this role for about 4 years now, and I take two approaches. One, for things for processes or platforms or systems that we are creating or modifying existing ones, I tell them to document the changes as you are going along. Don't wait until after, because we all say we'll get to it and then we never get to it. But at least if you have something that as you are going along, you're like writing it along, it may not be perfect to Tim's point. Like it'll be in like IT speak, but at least it will be something versus nothing that is usually a case of like, and especially us IT folks tend to have the thing like, oh, okay, I'll fix it, and I did this and I did this and I made this change, blah blah, and then someone comes in after you, it's like, what did you do? It's like, I don't remember all the changes that I did. So it's just like, well, had you documented? And then for the stuff that is kind of identified, like, oh, this needs to be a documentation to help an end user, but it's really for IT to just be like, hey, do this thing to help this user. It's nothing that the user can do. Those are the ones in which I try to be an example of like, okay, whenever, because Tim, you're probably the same way, is like when problems get to us, they're usually like the ones that no one can really solve or no one has really dealt with before, or they deal with it very rarely. And I try to say like, okay, I'm going to figure this out one time, and then I'm going to sit myself down and actually document it so that the next time it comes around in 6 months, 9 months, a year, and I have forgotten exactly what I did, I can refer back to that. For a lot of, to Tim's point, like a lot of that is more like I was just doing today for one of my colleagues was like, how do I restore a mailbox? I solved that problem a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. But if you ask me today, point blank, I was like, how do you do it? I was like, I don't remember. I have to go to my documentation and like actually refer to it. So that's when you identify those gaps, taking the time and realizing how important that is, because that documentation just saves me 30, 45 minutes of having to guide somebody through how to do this thing that they can do themselves just by reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great example.
Well, if I can speak to like my specific challenge here, my entire tenure here as VP, I've been building an IT team from scratch, right? And we're doing a really good job of that. I have excellent people. They know their stuff. They're really killing it in whatever their field is. They're really doing great. I'm pushing now for documentation because we figured everything out mostly. It's just the writing it down. Like what processes and policies can we, implement? What SOPs can we write to kind of govern what we're doing? So it's less ad hoc, more to this point. There's a couple tools that have been really helpful for that. And I'll go ahead and drop the links in here, and I'll kind of describe what each one does very briefly. I'm not going to take up all the time doing this. The first one's Scribe. And if any of you have heard about this, yeah, it's your best friend. If you can swing the payment, the monthly payment for it for a couple months, 100% worth it. It basically just allows you to go through a process and it does the documentation for you. We've had great success here, shortcutting a lot of things that have been, oh, I have to go type this in and take this screenshot. Yeah, this makes that a lot easier. You know, there's things that, you know, it doesn't do 100% well, but I appreciate it for what it is, which is a massive time saver. The other one, and if you go look at the lab and you go look at, you know, kind of my post history, you'll find exactly the moment that I geeked out the most about Obsidian, and now it's been a year-ish of consistent execution there. But Obsidian is more like a document management. If you think like a wiki, but not, same thing. Not really. It's all about the linking of things together and kind of building a repository. I've had a lot of success with that just in a mind mapping tool, but also it's really good at documentation as well. So I have some pieces of documentation in here that it was best to write in here rather than just a Word document. And then you can spit it out as a PDF. Really good for that tech-facing documentation that doesn't need to have letterhead or anything like that. But it's Markdown. You can take it anywhere and format it appropriately. You can even pull scribe documentation into this as Markdown and run through it that way. Haven't gotten that advanced yet. But Obsidian is really great for things like that, for things that need to kind of live together as a web of information rather than just single static pieces. I would wholeheartedly recommend exploring it. I have like a helpful plugins post in the lab from a year ago. There's probably some changes to that, but just enabling you to use that a little better based on my experience alone. Right there, you go. Thank you, Brittany. Just the reason I bring all this up, it's really hard to know where to start with tech documentation. We've already elaborated on that. So really, I just kind of pointed people to just start documenting what you're doing. Make the pieces of documentation based on what you're doing right now. And you'll start to get the idea of like, okay, I see the process. I see what needs to be done. And then they've naturally started to move beyond that. And that's really cool to witness the beginnings of this. And full transparency, that's where we're at as an organization, is just the beginning steps of this. But just if you're looking at that blank folder that we talked about, you have to just kind of know like what's going to help me the most. And if that's flummoxing you, then just go take a walk and come back and say, oh yeah, I understand life, the universe, and everything now. Great. No, that's not how that works. But yeah, I don't have an answer for you other than you'll just know kind of where to start or best to start if you just think about it. Mm-hmm. That's not a good answer, but there you go.
No, I think that's a great answer. I also wanted to ask about whenever you're creating documentation, how do you make sure that you're not documenting too much of the wrong things? Documentation, spending a lot of time on something that doesn't really need elaborating. How do you decide that there are things that aren't actually worth the time that you might be spending on
it? So for me, I would actually err on the side of including a lot of that stuff initially, because again, nothing goes from I created the documentation to it's ready for prime time. Like there's no A to Z, no A, and you skip all the other letters. Because I've seen this with a project that we kind of did last year. We rolled out Zoom phone to our staff, and as part of that, we were creating or somebody else was creating documentation, and it was just a simple thing. It was just like, hey, can you read this? Can you look through it and tell me, like, is this too much? Like, because it's very hard. Because the thing is, like, you may think it's too much, but that may be the one thing that's like, oh, this is the thing that ties it all together. But this other thing that you thought was important is not important at all, type of thing. So, like, I would say for the person who's doing it, create the documentation, put as much as you can into it, and then go to a trusted colleague and ask them, hey, can you look through this? Does it make sense to you? Because again, 9 times out of 10, the documentation that you're creating is not for you. It's for somebody else. It's for their colleague or the end user or whatever. So you are not usually the best audience of like what makes sense to somebody else, because you only know what you know. And you're like, well, it makes sense to me. And then you hand it to somebody else like, well, this doesn't make sense at all. type of thing. So and let them, and again, obviously it's notes and all that kind of stuff, but I have been, in my experience, it's been like I hand it to somebody and they're like, this is redundant, this is too much, this is missing, all the kind of stuff. I'd be like, oh, okay, thank you. I can modify that. And I've done that with other colleagues where it's just like, this is just, this is too much information. Just get rid of this, get rid, you already said this is redundant type of stuff. So I kind of do that to other people, and I have other people that I trust to do that with some of my documentation as well.
And if you end up with that VP title, congratulations. This is probably largely you that ends up being the great filter of documentation. Own that, run with that. That's a lot of trust in you. And I mean, just put the filter hat on and understand that you're doing a good work. That's the way it's worked for me anyway. That could just be me. No, I really think that that's 100% right. What's really helped me kind of hone people in, people that are not used to documentation, right? Either this is their first IT job or this is the first level of like serious, I'm not a level 1 technician just trying to survive with my ticket counts, right? I've become that more individual contributor a little more. I'm really good about giving people chances to grow. And so with that comes a lot of investment from me into them in growth. So part of that is teaching that individual contributor mindset. That's kind of natural to me now at this point, but you have to look at, Brittany mentioned getting hit by a bus. I have a piece of documentation in here that is the Tim hit by a bus or won the lottery. That is literally everything someone would need to know to start my job. Not do everything about my job. I'm not there yet. But you could at least be like, what does this dude do on the daily, weekly, monthly? Seriously, like I had to think about that. Kind of succession planning-ish a little bit, if you want to think about it from the leadership perspective. Giving that same mindset to each of my individual contributors. Okay, if you won the lottery, let's be optimistic here. If you got hit by a bus, let's think realistically here. I'm kidding. What are the things that someone would need to know to step into your role? If you're out sick for a week, what would someone need to know to do your job? Honestly, I answered my own question from before. That's how to look at the blank sheet of paper or the blank folder and start putting things in it. How would you replace yourself if you had to? And I know that's a morbid thought. Nobody wants to think that. The IT admin in us that's like, I'm going to put in all sorts of worms in the system so they can never remove me. I know we rebel against that. But if you think about what would be best for the organization for 5 seconds, that's the way to answer that. Yeah, please. Look, no, you're not replacing yourself with AI. Seriously, don't get me started. Please move on. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it's always come back to that in every discussion that we've had. So whenever you document systems and workflows and platforms and things like that, how do you make sure that the documents don't go stale basically immediately after you create it, especially if it's something that's not kind of evergreen, some sort of process that hasn't changed in forever? If it's a process that's kind of constantly evolving, how do you make sure that it also evolves, the documentation also evolves with it?
First off, I would say if a process is constantly evolving, is that something that you should document? Just first and foremost, like, because document, like Tim was saying, when you invest in people, you invest in documentation. It takes a long time and it's a lot of effort to create documentation. So if something is constantly changing and evolving and that kind of stuff, then I would ask, like, is that a good place to do documentation, or just kind of go with the flow and then once it's settled, then do documentation? But let's just say you have something that changes, that is like once a year, or more realistically in our world, the platform changes, like the UI changes a little bit and whatever. So that may not be every couple of months, that may be every couple of years and stuff like that. And I will say for us, we are the timeliness of this conversation is very good because we took a look at like, what is our documentation process? And more importantly, what is our refresh, or just having two eyes on it? What should that cycle look like? And so what we have settled on is like twice a year, when we know that tickets are going to be low and requests are going to be low. That's and it's like a week period where we have where there's like things are going to be kind of chill. Those are the weeks where we say like, okay, everyone take this corner of the universe and just look at the documentation that hasn't been updated in a year or something like that, or 6 months or whatever the cadence. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it is, but whatever the cadence is, like look for the documentation that hits whatever this threshold is. And so when you spread it out like that, one, it doesn't feel like, oh, it's all on me type of thing to do, but it also gives you that chance of like, okay, especially if you kind of leapfrog them a little bit. It's like, okay, you're only looking at a subset of your stuff every couple of months, type of thing. Because the thing that we discovered in terms, especially this is more with end user documentation, not so much with your staff IT documentation, is that if a document is actually, if you have a platform that says like document last reviewed or document last updated 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it can still be correct and still be right. But end users might say, oh, well, this is 3 years old, so it must not be relevant anymore. You're like, okay, so just the process of just being like, let's change that update to like, yes, we looked at this within the last year, 6 months or whatever, just even if nothing changes, just so that we send the signal to the end user of like, this is the most up-to-date information that we have. Because it's very easy for them to discount something that says like last updated 5 years ago. It's like we were in a different world 5 years ago. So I was like, this is still relevant, and it may be, but they will say like, nah, it's not, and then put in a ticket to the same thing.
That's a great point. So there was a lot that just got said there that I think is key to all of this. And the kind of the thing that's being said without being said is that you need a system of some kind to handle your documentation, to be able to give you that like, hey, last updated. And most likely, and I'm going to advocate for this, is a folder in your SharePoint, in your file server, wherever, that all your documentation's in. The other way, this is not an ad for Obsidian. I wish this was sponsored by Obsidian. I would be making so much money if it was. But the benefit with doing Obsidian, and this is the part where actually I will, I'll share my screen real quick if I can figure that out. Yeah. Let's see. Let's go here, and please ignore my blinking Teams notifications. I'm sorry. So there's a lot here. I'm not going to say it's the most organized thing in the world, but you're starting to see kind of what we're doing in here, and we're not perfect. So this is a piece of documentation we wrote that was a process that was very much intensive on me, and it didn't need to be. So I got myself out of the way and we documented it. I just sat down with somebody. I sat here. I mean, you could use Scribe. This was when we didn't have access to Scribe. So, I literally I walked a person through it, and as he was doing it, I typed it all out. So this is literally everything. And the cool thing is, if you have a file server or a SharePoint and you want this piece of documentation, this is the live piece. Let's consider it that way. This is the evergreen that we're talking about. But if you want it as like a point in time, this is what it is, and you upload that for user-facing documentation or anything, you can export it to PDF, or you could just copy it into Word as Markdown and then edit it from there according to your branding guidelines or anything like that. So I definitely would be a big proponent of, for your documentation, run something like Obsidian. If you can get it approved, I understand, right? Not every company is exactly the same and has the unilateral ability to just say, yep, we're using Obsidian. I get that. If you can, something like this would be awesome, because then it's living here. If I make a change here to exactly the point of, let's say Microsoft decided to rebrand Azure Active Directory to Entra Copilot Plus Premium, whatever, who cares? And you want the documentation to reflect that change that they'll change again in like 3 days. Thanks, Microsoft. Love you. Then you can do that. You can make those changes here and then just re-export it, right? That becomes part of your process. This is the part where I'll say where Obsidian really shines. I'm tasked with building an AI and data governance model. Big scary thing. Not really, but like I said, Obsidian's really good at mind mapping, and so I was just able to like break all of this out and kind of understand what I'm talking about with like the risk aspect, what's actually necessary in the model, and then each of these things link to completely blank documents. Don't judge me. That's coming, but I have my things here. So kind of in the vendor review checklist, right? I have some little breadcrumbs for myself. So, and you can draw lines, happy go lucky, right? So Obsidian, that's the plug for Obsidian. That's over. But the point is, if you have one place where your evergreen documentation is, and really your file server or whatever is hosting like a spun off copy of that, and you're doing the refresh, you're really going to help yourself. So it's all inclusive. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that you do kind of need to step back and think about how you're going to systematize this. And that's important to do at the outset without answering a ton of complex questions up front. I think if you're just doing documentation, you are helping yourself, but just think for a second, how are users going to see this documentation? If it's in the IT folder, they're not gonna. Think about things like that too, if you're starting the documentation journey. So anyway.
Mm-hmm. Where do y'all usually host your documentation and make it easily accessible and viewable by the audience that needs to see it?
So for us, we actually have two places where people can find two different types of documentation. So for our how-to, so the way that I describe it is, how do I, if that's a question that you have, then you go to our help center. And that not only includes IT, it includes our finance department, HR, that type of stuff. So it's more like, okay, how do I do something? But if your question is, what is our phone system? What is our email? What is our thing? Then that's our intranet. And that stuff is more evergreen because we don't change platforms and that kind of stuff too much. So that's where, and the reason that it's kind of different is like, it's a different experience because for the internet, it's about onboarding the person. And there's an easier path to be like Tim was just saying with this thing, there's more breadcrumbs that I can say like, and it goes to here and it goes to here and it goes to here type of thing. You're giving people a direction to go. And there's documentation that goes with that. And in some cases, there's links over to the help center. But we found like when people go to our help center, they're usually looking for a specific thing. They're not just going there to be like, I want to learn about our Outlook. They're going because I have a problem with Outlook. Type in the question and they want, so it's more search functionality. It's more built on search. But those are our two kind of platforms that we leverage so that people can easily find whatever they're looking for in the way that they want to look for it.
Gonna ditto that. I don't know why I make my life harder for myself. SharePoint is where a lot of our stuff lives for the user-facing side. We have a lot of tiles in the main intranet side that you just click on and it goes to the place, and we're pointing people there and they're having a lot of fun to answer those specific questions, right? Because in the initial stage, it was, a piece of documentation would solve this. But we're also shifting on the support side. I have my support team taking the tickets, looking at the ticket flow and just simply taking the documentation from a successfully closed ticket and throwing that in aggregate into a document and then synthesizing it. I will say, as the resident AI, like not so keen on guy here, this is probably something where AI does a decent job. So consider it, but verify it. Run it through your human brain before you go put it out in the wild. But taking a bunch of information and synthesizing it down into something useful, probably a good use for AI here. Just tread carefully and don't get your security folks mad at you. But SharePoint is where a lot of that stuff lives for us. It's just, again, I keep mentioning file server. It's where the people are. That's where your documents need to be. And you just need to put it in front of their face. And And then if that means that one of your guys is manually throwing it into SharePoint when a document's updated, make that your process.
And kind of jumping on Tim, in this particular case, I'm the anti-Tim in terms of like I'm for AI in certain instances, but specifically when it comes to documentation, one of the things that I've kind of leaned on it for is like how do we make it more engaging or easier to read? Because I can make the best documentation with, I can perceive that it doesn't have lingo in it, or I can give it to somebody. But kind of to what Tim was talking about with Scribe, like one of the things that I've discovered is like people now are a little bit more on the visual side of like, I want to watch a video or I want to watch a picture or whatever type of stuff. And I've used it because we use a platform, Zendesk, for as our kind of help center thing, and it has HTML functionality. But I am not an HTML coder. But I am just like, we have documentation that's just a wall, in some cases, a wall of text, and we built it like 3-4 years ago. That's the best we could do, whatever. But I'm just like, I've taken a few things that I was just like, I looked at it and I was like, this is just a wall of text for an end user. How do I make it so that I can compartmentalize it or make it more colorful or anything like that that just simplifies it for the user? And being able to throw, like, and to Tim's point, like I'm taking material that already exists and I already know that it's true and all that kind of stuff. All I'm doing is adding some visual flair to it, visual flair that I myself could not possibly bring to the equation. But I'm like taking this, putting it in here and say, make this pretty, make this prettier type of thing. And in some cases, it makes it more concise, where it was like scroll, scroll, scroll to like, boom, it's one thing and collapsible and all that kind of stuff. And it's just easier for the end user to read than it has been previously. So that's the place in which like you can possibly leverage AI. I agree with Tim. Like, don't never use it to be like, make me instructions or whatever, but like the instructions that you have made and you have vetted, how do we make it more easier for the end user? And again, this is usually all focused towards the end user. IT team, I'm like, you can read the jargon, you understand that type of stuff, but it's for the end user who is just like, if it takes me more than 30 seconds to understand what it is, you've lost me. And it's to for that type of attention span, things like AI to compress the information, or things like Scribe to be, because Scribe, in addition to the instruction, they have a new functionality where like, I think if it's web based, they will take you to the page and like guide you through the thing. And that is,
that's huge.
That's a game changer, because I feel, because sometimes it's not a matter of like people don't want to do it. It's more like if the wording, like if I say click enter here, but the word is actually submit, somebody might say like, is this the same thing type of thing? And from an IT perspective, like it's the same thing. It's just, yeah.
Just click the button.
Just click the button.
But like, I don't see the enter button. I don't understand.
Yeah, but you're like, but it's just like, okay, here's what the UI looks like, and you press this and you do all this type of stuff. Those type of, just like those small details are what give you, either prevents a ticket from happening or allows it, if the UI changes, whatever, because our platforms that we use all change and evolve over time and we don't always do it. They can say like, everything was correct up until this. And then you're like, okay, let me go change the picture. Now it's correct again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do y'all have kind of like structure and tagging, like for your documentation? So if it touches multiple different workflows or things like that, how do y'all structure the documentation so that things are easier to find?
In our particular world, we have kind of like the major categories of, so we have things like teaching software, teaching hardware, student software, student hardware, major categories that we kind of filter in that kind of stuff. But we also use some tags for ease of searching, mainly because, and Tim may know this, it's like there's what you can call the article, the help center article. Sorry, I don't know why I have to zoom in. There's what you can call the help center article, and then there's what people will actually say of like, okay, this is how you fix Outlook. My mail is not working. Okay, well, I should use the word mail. So that's where tags come in, where you put in what people will actually call the thing, which may not be the official thing that it's called.
Interesting.
Number one, that was really cool. I want to know what camera you're using because it seemed like it liked that.
I'm afraid to do it because I don't know if my camera can do that.
No, it's this particular model. It's to help you zoom in and out.
That's really cool. Anyway, that's beside the point entirely. That was just really like dramatic, and I love that. So as far as tagging goes, you'd like that, wouldn't you? No, we're not there yet. But more to the point. I mean, just as long as you're structuring your folders, I think at the very least you can at least help people guide. And I will say SharePoint has a decent search functionality. And I mean, if you're in the realm of Copilot, it stands to reason that you probably could ask Copilot for a thing and it maybe come up with that, right? I think that's really cool. I'm clicking that for later. I think there's ways to do tagging and metadata, like in SharePoint in the world that we're in. We haven't figured that out yet. And honestly, our folks are cool enough to go to the place and find what they're after or ask us and we just link it to them. So not there yet. That's a really cool, like on the horizon thing, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. What else would you say is on the horizon for y'all as far as documentation stuff goes? Are there any big projects that you're working on right now that would require kind of some comprehensive documentation?
Your dog really wants to be in this video.
I know. I'm really sorry. I keep trying to be like, hey, stop, be cool. And she's not being cool.
So kind of in our world, one of the things that we're actually trying to do is we have a lot of processes and procedures that are kind of like, to the lack of a better term, ad hoc type of thing, that we're like, oh yeah, I generally know how to do this type of thing. And then you have 3 people doing it in 3 different ways. So what we are trying to do for those processes are like, okay, this is how it should work. We're actually trying to get people to go back and revisit them and actually document them, whether it's with Scribe or Obsidian or Notepad or whatever, just like write it down. And then as part of it, a member of the leadership team is meant to vet it to make sure like it's not missing anything, so that we can have some type of standard. But kind of to Tim's point about the tags, this is very much a work in progress type of thing. We're not there yet. We just started on it this past year, but our goal is to get to the point where like a lot of the things that we kind of like take for granted of like people will know, we have it actually well documented somewhere.
I'm hoping by the end of the year, if not maybe a year from now, to be able to show off some really cool things that we're going to be doing as part of a big project that I've been referring to here and there. Right now, all of our systems are very siloed. Like we have SharePoint, right? We have points of record systems for just about every single type of thing. And all of that data is just completely siloed. And the organizational mandate from on high as a child welfare organization that's facing the media, that's facing the Texas state legislature, all of these stakeholders that really want to hear how well we're doing as an organization. We need to be able to tell that story. And so that's translated directly into funding and headcount and all the fun things that I love to build out a cohesive and comprehensive data lake. Been mentioning it here and there, but we're finally there. My next call after this is sitting for probably about 3 hours with my DevOps engineer to start architecting this thing out. So y'all, I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm kidding. But I say all that to say, like, that's going to mean a lot of documentation. And I really struck gold with this DevOps engineer. He's amazing. And documentation is one of those things, like he's shown me that he can really rock it. And so making him a change agent, making him go in and rustle up those things that, yeah, this is not the way things are anymore. Documenting systems in place as he's exposed to them, I think we're going to get a lot of visibility. So, and he's already said Obsidian is going to be his place to be. So I hope to show a lot of the cooler muscles of Obsidian, far more than I could hope to do in my limited VP time. But yeah, that's really the big thing is just massively overhauling everything about data in the entire organization, just very simply. And to casually do that, no problem there. Hopefully that yields a lot of good
Very
results.
quick, very
a lot
easy.
Of, yeah,
you know,
should be an afternoon, right? Be fine.
Yeah, you're gonna actually have this one meeting and you'll figure it all out then.
Yeah, probably literally once I give him the requirements, he's gonna go figure it out. And he told me like 6 months he'd have the thing done. I'm like,
okay.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, that's really the big thing, and just an overall documentation initiative, right? So finding out those rubber meets the road moments that I think everybody's running into of, oh man, how do we structure all this stuff now that we have more documentation than just the ad hoc stuff, like like what we were saying. Just we're gonna get exposed to it, and we're gonna figure it out, and I'm hoping that I get to share that journey with y'all in the lab. So stay tuned. I'll try to do what I can. I'm not going to say that I have all the answers or that I even have the right one, but just I think seeing someone's journey through it would really be beneficial, I think, for a lot of people. So I volunteer as tribute.
Okay,
You're
great.
welcome.
Thank you for your sacrifice. The last question I wanted to ask, because I know we're coming up on time, was regarding the different kinds of formats that y'all might use for documentation. So what we've talked about mainly is a live document that's just written words on a page. And y'all had mentioned different formats too. So how do y'all adapt documentation into different formats, whether it's an image or a video or things like that?
I think for the most part, I try to default to images because I feel like that's the one that reduces the uncertainty of an end user. Because ideally, if a documentation works correctly, if somebody has a problem on Friday at 7 o'clock at night, like they can clearly follow the documentation for it. Video is great, but it kind of falls into that line of like, it's kind of sometimes video is hard to keep up to date. Whereas with the image, it's like, okay, like I just said, of like, hey, the UI changed. It's now submit instead of enter. I can just swap out the image and you're good to go. With video, you basically almost would have to re-record the entire thing, and that's just adding more time. So I would reserve video for something that's like, okay, like this is how you do Excel or something like that. Something like it has not changed in a couple of years, and you don't have to go back to it. But I would say like the starting line is always the written word. Is always like Tim was just on with Obsidian. I'm just like, just sit down and write it out, because that is the blueprint for any other type of format you're going, whether it's like, okay, we're going to do this in tables, we're going to do this in image, we're going to do this in whatever. It all starts from, I wrote down this connects to this, connects to this, connects to that, connects to this. And then how do you translate that into something that for whoever's supposed to be reading it?
Sorry, I'm just over here. Micah just changed my life over here. I got to look more into Folke, but I think that's how you pronounce that. But he linked it. Brittany linked it in the chat. Dude, you can publish that as JSON. That's crazy talk. Anyway, that was my brain is blown right now. So evaluate that, right? I think a tool like this is really helpful because everyone's familiar with the PDF, right, or the Word doc, how to do a thing, and I think that has its place, and you shouldn't go away from that. There are things that is the best way to document, and I think images are just right alongside that. I think what you're seeing with both of these tools that we've mentioned, actually, kind of all of these tools, is visual is good for user facing documentation, 100%. They're not, nobody reading that. How many times do you, as an end user of a different product, go to their help center and go slog through the entire article? You don't. You simply don't. So don't expect that of your users. These tools right here have like HTML exports that you can host, or like widgets that you can host in, if you're in SharePoint, right? That's easy enough to embed on the page, and then it's a little workflow from there. There's ways to do it. I think you just got to figure it out, and you got to figure out what your audience is, because I work with a bunch of people that really love lunch and learns, and so guess what my primary transmission tool of documentation and trainings is. Yeah, that's right. We do a lot of lunch and learns where nobody buys lunch, and I don't know that they learn anything from me, but hey, lunch and learns. I would say that just this thing even does GIF exports, guys. This is,
yeah,
don't
I know. I saw that. I was like, man, I really
just saying. So I think that's the key. Know your audience. Know what's going to work best for them. Don't just do one thing because you've always done it. Think a little outside the box on this one. And don't be afraid to ask AI for, ways to do it, or maybe even help you do it. Just, again, trust but verify.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have y'all considered using like AI tools to have some sort of, internal chatbot where somebody can go and ask a question that's HR related or tech related or things like that?
Yes. Yes. That is one of the things that once we get kind of the data lake up and running, right? All that data is swimming in the same pond. That's trivial. That's trivial engineering to have an AI agent trained on all that info that's secure and all the things that's going to, make me sleep well at night. But yeah, 100%. It's on the radar, and it seems pretty straightforward to just, hey, what is our mileage policy? And then it spits it out, like, because it's trained on our data and not, what some other organization over there is doing. So yes.
Yeah. And same thing here. And to co-sign with Tim, the most important part is that it's trained on our data, and that if it doesn't know, it does not hallucinate. Saying like, oh, we don't have a policy for that. Like, okay, that's better than saying like, well, we do have a policy and it's $7 per mile. It's like,
Just like, make something. that is one thing that I do hate. Is I remember I was pulling quotes from a live stream once, and my boss had sent me the output, and I was like, these are really good quotes. And then I went to the timestamps. No one ever said any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, that's not helpful then.
Gotta verify.
Yeah. I think it's gotten better since then, because maybe that was a year ago, but yeah, gotta double check.
Also use Claude. Anyway, no, that's dumb. I'm kidding.
I mean, that's what we're currently using. We're over on that now, and it's been very helpful with getting all of like questions I have from a marketing side about things. Yeah. So yeah,
I think just equipping people with the tools and the documentation they need to do their job should be your purpose in this discussion. What are the easiest ways you can do that most effectively, and how are you going to solve the biggest problems in the way that is least disruptive to your, the other 800,000 things you're doing as an IT person. Just kind of put that in perspective. It's a part of what you do. You can't dodge it. You shouldn't dodge it. You're derelict in your duty if you dodge it. So do it well. And don't be afraid to ask for help. If hey folks, how do we document this thing? I'm sure there are people in the leadership lab. I don't know any, that would chime in and say, well, here's what we did. Right. So just don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I know that you have another meeting to jump to, Tim, so I will end this one here, but thank y'all so much for jumping on. This was some really good information and really good feedback. So anybody that's out there watching, I will be posting a wrap up of this discussion, hopefully today, fingers crossed. And we'll get you all of this information in a kind of quick, easy to read format. Get it done.
In a documented way. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Well, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We're going to be talking about a little bit something a little bit more nitty gritty, talking about scaling stably and addressing growing pains in a good way. So it should be a great discussion. So
All right.
awesome. Well, thank
Awesome.
y'all for being on. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.